So do you have a question first, or can I go first?
No, you can start it off.
So we know that what we're seeing now is all a product of like colonization in general, and that everything happening now is like has been happening, and there's different versions of what's happening now that have happened throughout history. And so like, is this kind of the blueprint of like what it looks like to end an empire? And like, what are you making of like what's happening right now? What do you think we're on track to see?
That's such a broad question. I think, I think, I mean, I hope this is the end of the empire, right? That doesn't mean that we need to collapse as a society, but it makes sense that things are shifting. But that's also being very optimistic. As a friend says, optimism or faith is just a form of empathy. So I don't necessarily have faith that everything is gonna change, at least in my lifetime. Hashtag I'm old. But but I think that these are changes that have been happening for decades and decades and decades. The problem is that social media has made it inevitable to actually something happen because everything is so visible. Um, this the way in which we conduct ourselves as a society and the ways in which we practice racism, because it's about an action. It's not about a given fact. It's something that it's so ingrained within our society. This is a system that was put in place by white people for like 200-300 years ago, right? They've been working on this, and even longer if you think about the connotations of a Western society. That for the not for the first time, but in the past century or so, people are like, this shit is not working. That by the year 2054, there's gonna be more mixed and people of color than white people. What are you gonna do with a system that was not made for us? Do we all need to co-opt into that system, which it seems to be the popular thing online? That you have to be successful and you have to be in the foreground of the movies and the commercials and visibility, but that just is getting co-opted into the empire instead of asking questions and recontextualizing everything, which I know is utopic, but there's ways to do it. So is everything gonna change? I don't know how long it's gonna take. Should it change? Yes. As long as there's power being contested, like if it's not gonna be racism as the way we know it today, there's gonna be other forms of injustices. Just because as long as we are invested in power, in land possession, land resources, extraction, and making money, it's all gonna be la misma tortilla pero volteada, like it's gonna be. I don't see. I mean, I'm happy that all of this is happening. I'm happy that being racism, it's being not normalized anymore. That people are pointing the finger, and that's important. But that's just the beginning. As I mention all the time, to say this act and this person is racist, that's just the beginning of it. But how did it happen? How did we get here? And why are we still doing this? Why is it still working for some people? Those are the real questions that take a long time to comprehend and to make sense of. That requires reading. That requires longer dialogues. That requires more education. But again, all of these systems and the way that they are played for us, they're meant to be as such, so we don't have to ask those bigger questions. So it's okay to just point fingers. It's fine, but and I'm happy because that's something that we didn't even do back then. If so and so I don't know, big Hollywood star did something stupid like that, people just kept quiet, you know? And now people are pointing fingers, ending careers, and that's all great and dandy, but y mis 50,000 pesos que? Like, what about those big questions? And I feel like that's where the change could happen. Asking those big questions. Yes, this is discriminatory. How and why and how do we get here? That's when you can see real change happening.
Isn't it true though that like capitalism like has to end, like whether it's now or like 50 or 100 years from now, because like it's not sustainable, and even for just the earth, you know, like capitalism is not sustainable. I don't think we're like we're saying, if we're talking in our own lifetime, like I don't know that my lifetime would see like the United States completely switch over to a new form of like civilization, but like I also like just a follow up to that thought is also just like how class is inherently tied into everything, and how the working class has also just been dumbed down for so long that like what will uprising look like if we don't have land, if we don't have money, like we can't get food, because like we've let billionaires go so far for so long, and we've let generational wealth just like the way, because I'm just thinking about the weight or the wealth gap, just like that exists. Like how do we do, how does an uprising even logistically happen in something that's this extreme of a wealth gap?
The problem,
what are we gonna do?
the problem is that the alternatives that exist out there also don't necessarily work because there's power to be contested. So when you think of socialism and communism, at the core of it all, they sound great, you know? But the problem is that that's always controlled by a group of people. So even in places where they have their shit a little bit more figured out, there's always somebody in power that goes against all of those ideals. And that's where capitalists concentrate on, to say that socialism doesn't work and communism doesn't work. And they make it as an evil. It's an evil thing, right? Which is what we saw in this country for the past century, basically. Yes, it doesn't work. Like capitalism doesn't work, but we're a part of it. Here I'm talking to you with a computer, a mic, a cup of coffee, spoons. All of that costs money, and it's ruined the environment. This transmission has ruined the environment. This interview, you know? Like art participates in also all of that. So how do we change all of that? It's almost utopic. It will be great, but it's utopic. So I think we should be concentrating on the ways that we can change things in our immediate environment. Try to like bring the scales a little bit more level. I do it through conversations and I do it through dialogue. And I know I can do a lot more, you know? But we also have to, like, I have to choose my battles in order to, one, keep sane, two, take care of my friends and my family, which are the most important things I have. So, yes, there's a wonderful book by Raj Patel, which is called The Value of Nothing. And in that book, he talks about how within our DNA, within our system, we are trained to give and not to receive. So there are certain things chemically happen inside of us that makes us more happy to give than to receive. And that's the opposite doctrine of capitalism, because capitalism is about receiving, 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 receiving. The world is ending in the news, and it's like, oh, let's talk about diversity and this and that, and then cut to commercials and buy cars and open restaurants again and consume that coffee, like all of that. So that's what we are made to believe, that we have to receive in order to purchase and to buy. But the reality is opposite. We actually, as animals, we gain more pleasure by giving, you know? So just with that in mind, you realize that that system is not human, that system it's not going to work, and it's not working. But I mean, it's hard for me to say how to change it all. Yes, you can say, let's all drop off the grid, cut electricity, forms of communication, stop mobility, no more cars, no more airplanes. But we're so ingrained in everything that that's utopic, and that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we continue to live with these systems without further damaging the environment, without further discriminating against people, without further committing this sort of extermination projects, against species? Is it sustainable? I don't know. Like, those are big, big, big questions that I'm not trained to answer. I
Mm-hmm.
just know that you're right. It's not working, and it's a big change that I don't know how long would it take. But again, I'm a pessimist, so I feel like as long as there's power to be contested, shit's gonna be the same. It's like the whole thing with colonialism that we learn in class.
Mm-hmm.
When people started thinking about post-colonialism, there's nothing post about it. We are living in a colonial era. It's just there's different institutions, there's different conceptions about freedom, there's different things that everything has changed, but we still we're part of a colonial system to a certain degree. Noah, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. You said something about like talking to people and debating sometimes, but also like picking battles. And I was wondering, like, if you like think there's value in just like, I don't know, just having like regular conversations about it with just everyday people, or debating like some people that are against it. When is it? And if you think there is value in it, like when is it useful? Like when do you think it's the right time to do it, and then when is it the wrong time to do it? I guess just like, what's your opinion on just having like changing people's minds, or just bringing up things that they wouldn't necessarily think about just in like everyday like conversation?
Can I add to that too? Like, because especially after I went to that Trump rally here, like I also do feel an element that like I can't encompass everyone. Like there's some, and that some people are there to distract me, where like it would be worth more of my time to do something else. But go ahead. I also don't know if that's like even elitist to like think,
Well, it depends. Like I to put the weight of the world on people of color, to put the weight of the world on people of color, it's unjust. Like people need to resolve their own issues. So yes, there's a lot of value to it, but again, in my opinion, it really depends on the day of the week. Because there's times where like if I have a chance, I'm gonna say something, and I'm gonna, I cannot be quiet, especially when there's like big injustices happening in front of you. You cannot stay quiet. But also when you're in a place where you're surrounded by a group of people, and you are supposed to be the one answering all of those questions, like that's not fair. You know what I mean? So it is important to know when to speak and what to say. It's important not to stay quiet, especially understanding when not to stay quiet. But I also find it unjust that we had to spend our life teaching all these people about the ways in which they fucked us up. That's not fair either. But as long as you're not burnt out, you should do it. You should definitely do it. I start with a family because we're a part of the systems. I start with my classrooms, so hopefully you all can take those conversations further, right? I start with Latinos Who Lunch. I start with Unsettling Journeys, like having those conversations and pushing them out there and open and saying, okay, I'm creating content and I am making this available and my resources available to you all. But it doesn't mean that I'm just everywhere I go, I need to be on 24/7. Like, I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't. So, like, in the podcast, for instance, we were the authorities for Latino media. I just stopped watching Latino media because the problems that I was pointing out and the reasons that I saw why there was a lack of visibility did not change in the past 4 years. And I'm pessimistic. So I chose my battles and I decided to concentrate on other things. Like I concentrate on my classroom as opposed to fighting for fucking Jennifer Lopez to get an Oscar when she's part of the empire too. You know, just because she's brown doesn't mean she's not. So.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's complicated. It's complicated. I'm not gonna say do not speak. I will never say that.
Yeah.
But I also do not think it's fair to put all the weight on people to say something or to teach more than anything. You do have to say something. Everybody should say something, especially in the face of injustices. But how, when, and who has the control of those conversations? It's something that sometimes is not up to us, you know?
Do you have another question?
I guess just like along the lines of like if and when and how things can see radical change, because like I always go back and forth of like, is it gonna like, does it have to be some scary like violent uprising that like seems to be taking place right now, especially like what's gonna happen after the election? Like, I don't know, like shit could hit the fan even further, or like is there a better way and it just is like taking time, and it would just like it just takes like our generation getting into positions of power. Like I always go back and forth like which one's going to happen and like which one would even work, because like I do like I like am feeling down about a lot of things, like especially recently, because like it's just thing after thing after thing this year, and like we're all seeing it, but
it's,
and then I get like glimmers of hope.
It's been like that, no? Like it's been like that since 1492. The problem is that it hasn't affected us as much before, because the three of us here are in a position of privilege, of a lot of privilege.
Yeah.
So as much as it feels like, here we go, 2020, to a lot of people it's just a regular ass year, you know what I mean? So I think that how will the change happen? Is it going to be the revolution that we've all been waiting for? I don't know. And I don't even know if that's going to work. You know, like, it depends on who you talk to. Somebody who's been fighting and uprising and protesting since the 1960s. They're tired as well, you know? So, like, what are they going to tell you? The people that have been in the front lines. I haven't, you know? I've been too busy with my education, you know? So, like, it's hard to tell how and how much worse everything is going to get. It does feel like that. It's visible. It's everywhere. And taking care of yourself is extremely important. But
I feel like the reason people say like this year sucks so much is just because, I mean, obviously it depends on the group of people, but like now it's just with social media and then all of us being inside, it's just like so present. I feel like it's just like my Instagram feed is just all like this whole year has been that. And I mean, like it's always been like I've seen political stuff, but this year it's super trendy to be on it too. And so I see like a lot of people that were like apolitical before just like get into shit right now. I mean, like sometimes they're doing things, sometimes they're not. But I guess like when I was saying like I get glimmers of hope sometimes, because sometimes I just talk to people that, you know, they don't really follow things as deeply as like us, but they still will say like they don't understand politics at all, but they'll still say really progressive things. And I'm just like, you don't even realize what you just said. Like for you to say that was like pretty radical. And so like when I talk to people in my generation, it's like, even if they're not like angry or anything, they'll still say forward thinking things. And so then I think like, is it just a matter of us getting older? And not that we would just like fix everything, it'd be a utopia, but I'm just like, could we see some like big positive changes? It just takes time.
Like I quit social media for that reason, because I was overwhelmed, right? There's just so much all the time. It's just like, that's the thing, like you think you're talking to the wrong person, because like, for example, like my generation fought for visibility, right? But my generation really thought that being in the forefront of popular media will change things, and it is, because it normalizes us. It normalizes who we are. Um, we saw it with, like, in terms of gender, we saw it with drag queens. Like, drag queens went from being these clowns to being in vogue and being these powerful personalities. So now they're part of the empire is going to co-opt our movement one point or another. So, and the thing is that because we've been taught that success looks a certain capitalist way, we're all about it. But if you say that to somebody that has made it, they're gonna get mad at you. That's happened to me one time in the podcast. I said I didn't want to be rich. I got a letter saying, why do I say that? What kind of example I'm giving to Latinos? You should love yourself, and you should think, like, you should think that you can do that. And even my co-host even said that. And I'm just like, no, like, that's how we've been taught in this country that success looks like. So I don't know how the next positive change may look like, because what we were fighting for and everything we wanted, we have it. Here we are staying, in the middle of nowhere, and we actually have access to television as opposed to just YouTube, which is what we do. I've done for the past 2 years, curating my own content, right? And we're watching commercials, and there's brown and black people everywhere. We're at the forefront of every single fucking product now. We did it. Or did we? You know what I'm saying? So the face of change and how it looks like and what it's doing and what's going to happen, it is normalizing a lot of things, and a lot of things are necessary. And the way that TV commercials and movies are looking at, that's how it should have looked for the past 100 years. But the problem is that we were fighting against each other. Don't call me this, don't call me that. I need more visibility, this, and that. And up there, the people in government, they still did their shit, Like, we can. I was talking with a friend, fighting, because she sent me. I sent her the Google thing about Jovita, who was this, like, journalist fighting for the victims of lynching peoples in Texas, especially Mexicans. And how now she was like a Google thing. Like, how they show the little story in Google, and I'm just like, ugh. And then my husband found this, like, cutout dolls that you can dress Jovita in different dresses. And I sent it to my friend, and I was like, what? We're teaching little girls about what she's wearing as opposed to what she's doing? And then we went back and forth, and she's like, well, I can tell you're not a woman of color, didn't know the struggles, and you didn't see that. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm trying to say, So, like, we went back and forth, and at the end, she was right. She's like, we're fighting right here, but, like, kids are still incarcerated in the border, in cages, as we're fighting about this stuff. And I'm just like, that's right. So, like, and that's usually what happens, that at the forefront of our problems, the things that are visible, it's only the surface of how everything is and how everything works. And to a certain degree, we're powerless. We have a lot of power because we have seen that uprising changes the face of a lot of things throughout history. That's without a doubt. But I don't know if that is sufficient anymore, But I'm not a political analyst, so, and again, I quit social media and I moved to the middle of the desert, so I'm the wrong person to ask. But all of
we want to ask you these things. I want to know your thoughts.
But all of that is happening is just a reminder that we can never stop, resisting in whatever way resistance looks to you. And these dialogues are important, right? So at least we can have those dialogues. At least the dialogues are everywhere. Now, I think my fight and my war is to move the dialogue a little bit forward, to ask those bigger questions. So by the time kids of the new, like, before Gen Z kids, the questions that we have, they don't have them anymore. It's like with my nephew, when I told him, he was like 6 or 7, I was like, I'm gonna get married to a dude. He's like, okay. If somebody would have said that to me when I was a kid, I would have been like, what was going on, you know? So like things are getting normalized and things are changing, and the tools of hate are readjusting, and you know, like all of that is necessary. But I do feel that the big problems that are visible to us all are just the tip of the iceberg, because the trickle down effect of how power functions, not only in this country but around the world, is far greater than we could possibly imagine. And sometimes we need like 100 years for us to look into the documents and reinterpret things and realize that things were even more fucked up than they actually seem like, you know?
Do you think that like resistance also means for us like acknowledging that like not everything is gonna happen in our lifetime? Because like even these ideas that we have, because like we are already noticing what's happening, and we're like, it just seems like the perfect storm, whatever, like, but it's because we have the critical skills to like think about those things, where like you're saying, like for my mom, she doesn't know that like this is the perfect storm, whatever, like, so then in us resisting and like making resistance a part of being radical, like should we just accept that it might not be this generation?
But it depends on how that
sees?
acceptance looks like. To accept it, does that mean lack of action? Then no, I don't think you should accept it, you know? And I'm glad you brought your mom, because we talked about, you asked about capitalism. Like, tell that to your mom. Tell her to stop working. You know? When all her life she's worked for you.
Right.
And that's not her fault, you know? Like, that's how we have been conditioned, and that's what we have to do. We gotta fucking work to gain money and to spend it, because that's how we've been conditioned. So for me to say I'm gonna stop working and drop off the grid to not participate in the system is not gonna change things. But also for me to say fuck it, I'm gonna go Walmart every day, it's also not gonna help it. So it lies somewhere in the middle, where you, again, choosing your battles seems like the wrong way to frame it. But it's I'm not gonna tell my dad that all his life and all his life work, my grandfather picking fucking strawberries, my dad working in construction worker, him buying houses, the market crashes and then he loses his houses. I'm not gonna be like, capitalism fucked you up. You know, I'm not gonna say that. I can't tell him that. But I also don't have the answer either, you know? So like acknowledging that this shit may not change and it's not working doesn't mean that I'm gonna stop questioning or asking or making people aware that shit is not working. You know what I mean? So I think the answer lays right somewhere in the middle, where you cannot empathize and stop action. You can accept that everything is fucked and just stop action, but instead understand that we've gotten to this place for a certain reason, that there's room for action and change, and to accept that if the change are minimal in your lifetime, that's okay, you know, because we have been conditioned for things to change in this slow pace, you know?
And yeah, like even our generation, just like we get things instantaneously because of the internet. Like what if we just think that like all of these things happening, like, that, yeah, they're supposed to happen, this is gonna happen next, 2020 is crazy, like whatever, like
yeah, it's hard. Like I remember the first week without Facebook. I was going crazy, because I will sleep with my phone, and I will just like wake up and just look at my phone, and I was like, I can't. So like I was going crazy. Like same with Instagram. I kept sending my sisters pictures of everything I saw, because I just needed to post something. I don't feel like that anymore. So like that's a tiny little change that I did for me. So I know like the way that we process and we have access to information, it's such that it seems like we could never live without that, you know? But again, for me to say social media, it's just how it is from now on, doesn't mean that I need to go back to social media. You know what I'm saying? So you have to think about those things, how they affect you and your surroundings, and the change that you can do for you and your surroundings before thinking about how the whole entire fucking world is going to change, because we don't have the tools. And if we have the tools, it's going to take a long time and a lot of work and a lot of sacrifices, you know?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of sacrifices. A lot of people give their entire lives for the cause, and God bless, you know? Like, that's good, and we need people like that. Pero that's your choice, you know? That's your
Mm-hmm.
choice. So, not to say that if you decide to just follow your dreams and your careers outside of just always making a change makes you a bad person, but also acknowledge that you chose this path and you also have privilege, and there's room for you to create difference. And how are you going to do
Mm-hmm.
it, you know? And to me, it's all about your surroundings. That's why I'm always talking to all of you. We're always texting. That's why I'm always in communication with my students. That's why I'm always having these conversations with family members and my small group of people through the podcast. But I feel like I'm not doing enough every single day, because I am not, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But also, like, I gotta take care of my family, you know.
Mm-hmm. You have a question? I know you said 30 minutes too. Are we
We
still
can do like a
good?
couple
You have
more
one
minutes.
more question? Okay.
Yeah, that was a good point when you were talking about like telling your father, your grandfather, like it'd be so devastating to like burst their bubble like that, to like say all of like a work or this or that like messed you up, or it was like for nothing. And like, yeah, I do often think about that with my parents. Like, it's like a fine line where I'm like, sometimes I'm like, they'll never get it, but then I'm like, oh, maybe they could get it. But then I think like, if I did finally get through to them, like, then what? Like, is that good for them to like know that, like, because like my dad being an immigrant and then living in poverty, and like he like really worked his way up, but like, you know, for what cost? It's like did a lot to him. And like, if I were to get him to realize it, you know, it's like, is that even productive, you know?
Because even I feel like with when we recognize it, me and you, like, not that we're miserable, but like we are upset and scared about what's coming. But it's because we're aware of these things. So even if we share this information with other people, where it's like, yeah, I feel like your dad should know that like capitalism isn't like the greatest thing in the world or whatever. But at the same time, once we tell them that capitalism isn't the greatest thing, like, we're kind of just setting them up to be just as miserable
Yeah,
as
like,
we are.
But then
you
again,
know?
it's like he's already like sad. It's like I'm like,
But we also already benefited from that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, when I graduated, my advisor made sure to be like, you are walking on that stage, you know, with your grandparent and your father in your shoulders. Like, their work is been, you know, like, to a certain degree, you're doing that
Mm-hmm.
because of them. So like, when I was hooded, I was thinking of my grandfather. Like, that's what I was thinking, you know, when that happened. But he worked for a capitalist system, you know. He worked
Mm-hmm.
very hard. I mean, did he thought about that, about his grandkids having PhD? Perhaps he did, perhaps he didn't. But for to a certain degree, the system worked for him, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm not gonna
yeah.
be like, this shit doesn't work, Dad. You know, when that would be hypocritical
Mm-hmm.
of me. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like, we do need to find those balances, and we need to find the ways in which we participate, the ways in which we can create change, the ways in which we can resist without having to be like, listen, because we always think like, oh, our parents don't know better or whatever. But with time, you realize that they're doing their shit for a reason, you know? That they
Mm-hmm.
insisted on working when they shouldn't be working for a reason, you know? Like, and those are things
And they're
that
still
they're
good people
generational.
too.
They're generational, and we might sometimes takes decades for us to realize that. But the truth is that we have been conditioned to this system. So I'm 38. There you go. I'm 38. Let's say I have 30 more years of life, hopefully, hopefully more. Like, what am I going to do in the next 30 years? Am I just going to be complaining? Am I going to keep teaching? Should I stop teaching and just go to the forefront? Should I drop off the grid? Like, those are the questions and choices that I have to make. But I can 100% assure you that whatever choice I make comes from a place of privilege. And because I know that, I am very careful of the choices that I'm making, But some of us don't have that privilege to make a choice. Some of us have the privilege to make those choices to affect the rest of the world without giving a fuck, But we're complicit.
Mm-hmm.
We're always complicit in these systems. Even when you think we don't, even when you drop off the grid and you think you're the best person, like the prosperity of this country is at it's at the expense of the rest of the world. So just us existing here, you know what I'm saying? So it's super, like, we're so in depth. Like, estamos embarrados de mierda. Like, it's so big. It's so much. It's bigger than us. That's why I'm always insisting on starting with your surroundings. Because if we all did that, if we all concentrated just in our families, every single person just concentrating on their families, like the change will be fast. The change will be great. But again, it's about choices. It's all about choices. Maybe like concluding questions or thoughts before I go and eat something.
I guess if I do have a last question. So there's like because you've mentioned resisting by going off the grid and kind of like taking a step back from everything and just like going off social media and things like that. But then there's like also resisting as in like I see people resisting, but they're like using social media, but they like are really focused with it and like get information out there and like utilize it. And like, do you think those are just two different ways of resisting and they're like equally as valid?
Yeah, like a lot of big uprisings started in social media,
Yeah.
But a lot of elections have been manipulated through social media as well.
Yeah.
So it's
definitely.
a double-edged sword. So, but it's just so part of our everyday life that it's almost like it's hard to measure the pros and cons of it because it's just part of who we are as a society. You know what I mean? It's just that I grew up without it. I live without being able to live without it. And now I don't have it as much. I still depend on it a little bit because I'll be like, hey, post something, or I'm still on YouTube or whatever. So I'm still part of it to a certain degree. It's just not like I did before. But yeah, it's a necessary evil. We have been conditioned to just depend on it. You know what I mean? But there's ways to have a healthy relationship with it, I think. But that's like a whole entire different conversation. But like, for example, with this new venture of the YouTube channel, we need social media to get the voice out there. I'm not going to go back, but hopefully Kaylee and Joshua will take care of that for me. But that's just a personal choice. That's just a personal choice. So I don't throw shade on people that live for social media. I don't throw shade at people that depend their livelihood on social media. It is what it is. It's like when you don't have money and you have to go eat at McDonald's and buy in Walmart every day. It is what it is, But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't find ways to resist. Absolutely. Always, always. And how resistance looks, it's different from everybody. And hopefully we'll get to a place where it looks similar to all of us. And it seems like we have these bursts of hope where like resistance may not change the world yet or right now, but it's changing a lot of things in the face of a lot of things. And that's beautiful. It's deeper than that. Everybody knows that we need diversity. Everybody knows that we need these conversations. Everybody knows that they're starting to be confronted with their privilege. But how to go about it, everybody's going crazy because they don't know. So institutions are having these conversations, but they don't know how to have these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
But at least we're having these conversations. I mean, we should be having them since the fucking 19th century.
I was going to say, like, I feel like a concluding thought I'm having too is like, because I feel like we kind of came to this conversation because we're just like looking and searching for answers and conclusions and like what is when X equals, because we all know like what is X and we know whatever, like it almost feels like maybe like, because we're not gonna be post-colonial, like we can't be, like there's no way for me individually to like exist outside of capitalism in this system. So like it feels more productive and like a better answer, like at least I'll even have an answer in my brain when I think of it as how do I navigate the system that we're already in.
But I think
like
I think that's the education system that failed us, that has taught us history as beginning, middle, and end, like if it was a Hollywood movie. And this is the road to independence, this is the heroes of independence, and this is freedom afterwards. When no, it's never like that. Like history is just a series of interpretations by some dudes, you know. And for the most part, white, straight, cis males, you know. So the education system has failed us. That maybe we have our ideas about change and revolution based on what we learned in school, but those also were manipulated. So maybe we need something greater. And how does it look? I'm not the authority. Like I am completely the wrong person to ask these questions, you know, because just like you, I do feel like I can do a lot more, especially right now, right? But I also, again, we all have our choices. So I think it's that. I think it's how does change look in our brain? You know, how does resistance look in our brain? That's why learning about history is so important. Because we, like in my class, Native resistance, one of the things that I learned as I was teaching it is that Native resistance in Chile look a certain way. In New Mexico look a certain way. In Veracruz it look a certain way. In the Chichimeca region it look a certain way. It wasn't all like, fuck you, we're gonna kill you. Like it was just like that. The Mapuche negotiated with Spanish authorities and they never really were fully colonized. That's a form of resistance. Survival, but also a form of resistance. So how does it look like? Let's learn. History tells us a lot of that. The problem is that the history that we receive in school is just like a nice little sentimental fantasy that doesn't really tell you the whole entire thing, you know? So maybe that's where the answer is. Learning more about how this sort of big changes have happened throughout history, learning all the different perspectives, or try to learn as many perspectives. So by the time we come back and try to make sense of what we're going through today, it looks brighter, more hopeful. But again, hope is a form of empathy. But anyway, I think that's it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was really good.
That was really cool.
Bye.
Bye.
So you met Babelito, the one and only.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Pretty cool guy.
He's a pretty cool guy. Like what I was saying at the end, like, because I do feel like when we were thinking too much about like post-colonial theory and like what is all of this, like what's happening, what's gonna come next, like it really removes you from yourself, or it's just an individualistic way of thinking in general, where it's like the reality is that we can make immediate changes, and I was not thinking about that at all. Like I was only thinking like, what the uprising is gonna happen? When's it gonna happen? Like what? But we can't control that. We don't know when. We don't know what November is gonna be, and it's not. It is honestly a distraction then to be working ourselves up about November when we don't know what's gonna happen. You know, not that like you can't think about that, but you like he said, moderation. You know.
Yeah. I think what was interesting, it's just like thinking about like resistance looks like so many different things, because just like what he does is resistance, because I was just thinking like resistance is getting information out, which he does get information out. I'm not saying he doesn't, but like he's not on social media.
Yeah.
And that in it of itself, in nowadays, can be considered a form of resistance because you're not giving your attention. Because like what social media, the people who own social media, what they're doing when they like run ads, it's like they're basically selling your attention.
Yeah.
So it's like your attention is being exploited, and he doesn't like that's a whole medium that he's not even. And so then it made me think, I'm like, what? Like I don't even have to get off social media, but even if I just like spent way less time. Like if it was just like, even just going on like once a week. Like if I did that, I was like, that would probably change so much about me. And then it's like, what would I really miss?
Yeah. Because you'll still get the news eventually.
Yeah, it's because it's like
anything that's important.
I used to be like, I should just go on like once a day, and then I'm like, that's hard and stuff. And I'm like, honestly feel like I can't do once a day. I think I'm not capable of that.
You're addicted to it.
But I think I could do once a week. Because like once a day is like, well, I've been trying to do, and I've done this so many times, from like twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening. And like some days I do it and a lot of days I don't fucking do it. But if it's like once a week, it's like I wouldn't open it because I'm like, no, you can't even go on it today. Because like the once a day thing is like, oh, I can only go on it once a day, but like one look isn't going to hurt.
Yeah.
You know, but I think if I did it like just once a week, which I would like to try that, because it's like, yeah, because I always think about like as an artist, like wanting to get myself out there and wanting to like have that, like get in people's face, which like obviously I would like to, like I like making art just for myself, but like I would like to have, like just share it with people, collaborate. You know, have people, not that I'm just trying to get the praise of people, but like when people like your art, it feels good, obviously.
And you can still use them as tool. And that's why I also think like, because people like us, not that I'm trying to make it like elitist or anything, but like me and you as artists especially, like should not be, we're not going to be the ones scrolling because we have nothing better to do or whatever. Like we do have good ideas and there are things we should make, but that's not to say like, because other people do scroll on it. Like other people are willing to sell their attention and whatever, but like that doesn't, like we can then interject their scrolling or whatever by putting out our things. And like that in itself, even offering them an opportunity to resist this system that they're already participating in, like, because I'm just thinking about how, like, we put out this video. This is, like, brown people talking about radical politics. Like, that's taking up space that would have otherwise just been, like, another white girl beach picture, you know? Like, but people still need that opportunity to even have it. And that then is our responsibility. Or not responsibility, but, like, a way we can use social media to make change, you know? Because it's like, yes, we need to moderate our relationship with it, just us personally, but like we can still use it as a tool, and that tool helps other people as well.
Yeah, and that's what I've been like after that conversation, especially. I'm just like I can just use it. Like if I used it less, it would be even more powerful because then I wouldn't be wasting
the space.
Like, well, I wouldn't be like selling my attention, but even just my energy. It's like, how much of my energy am I just like selling to them when I could be just make? Because like at the end of the day, all I want to do is make art.
Yeah.
I just want to have fun and make art, and things get in the way, and I just have like, especially this year, like I've said it so many times, but I just keep like, I have so many like just capitalist ideas that I've internalized, and like I feels like every fucking day I'm just like, God, I found another one. Get out of here. But that's literally what it feels like. I'll notice one. I'm like, oh my God, that's like just a total consumerist capitalist thing that like when I think about how I would view myself and like success in the music industry when I was a sophomore in college and how I do it now, I'm just like, dude, being like this like pop star is stupid. it's fucking stupid because then you're just you have to completely water yourself down, and you like the people who are like the most popular aren't like saying anything interesting. Like I've noticed across like this summer and like as of now, it's like I'm not trying to do it to be edgy. I just like am just like I literally just want to consume and listen to like I mean the artists I listen to, they still have like solid fan bases, but like no one I'm listening to now is like a big pop star, you know. It's like, yeah, they may have 1 million listeners on Spotify, but a lot of them still don't come from wealth. And so, like, they made a fan base, but they're not, like, super well. Like, they're just, like, they're artists. And I just, like, I'm, like, and because once you get super high, and, like, and then it's, like, why do you even want that? Like, yeah, you'll have all this money, but then it's, like, I don't know. Doesn't that just make life more complicated in a lot of ways? Like, I'd be like, oh, I would just love to do all these interviews and all this shit. And it's, like, I think I would like a healthy amount of that. Because, like, some of the artists I like, it's, like, they still do. Like, they have PR and, like, press stuff. But, like, they can still, like, just not...
Go to the grocery store.
Yeah. Like, some of them can go to the grocery store. And some of them, like, they don't have to post on social media, like, for a while. And, like, no one would give a shit. It's just, like... And, like, underground artists that, like, never really blow up at all. Like, they're just as valid as anybody else. Like, the...
I was going to say, like, even because we're saying that, like, social media is just where our attention is being sold, and how, like, for people like us, that's really bad but that's exactly what they want, you know? Like, they don't want artists of color spending time making their art, especially when they have very far left radical ideas. And, like, because all of the ideas that we have are a threat to capitalism. Not that, like, we're so single-handedly going to take it down, but, like, the more people that think like us, the more likely we just have a class conscience, you know? And, like, that they don't want people to have a class conscience. So it's not even that it's specifically about, like, Noah and Kale, like, shouldn't be making art or whatever. Like, they don't want anyone to. So, like, social media is just a thing that exists for everyone, but, like, included in that, they don't want us to be focusing on our ideas or whatever, and that is a result of capitalism. So, like, the times that we can recognize that and step away from it, we should be doing that.
Yeah. And it's like, with all that time I spend trying to, and I've been walking away from this recently, but just like with all the time you spend keeping up your artist persona, you could just be making art. Yeah. Because nobody, like, we think everyone cares about our persona. Even us, who are not even like we're not really into, like, image the way, like, you know, like, just really superficial people are on Instagram and TikTok and all those people that just, like, well, they don't actually do anything, but then they care about, like, if I post this picture, how does it look with all my other pictures on Instagram? Like, or there's so many people like that. But, like, we're not even like that, but we still, I mean, I don't know about you. I guess I'm just speaking for myself. Like, I still was, like, thinking, like, oh, I still need to have, like, a good artist persona and, like, post good pictures of me to just engage with people, like, grow a fan base. But I'm just, like, just focus on making good stuff. And, like, not that, like, fan base is my ultimate goal. Obviously that would be great, because if you can profit off your art while still, like, keeping artistic integrity, that's, like, a perfect scenario. But if you just make really good art, like, you can get a fan base and you don't have to, like, bullshit with all the shallow just, like, image stuff.
But it's also, I also don't think it's too much to ask as artists to want a living, to be able to have a living for what we do.
Exactly,
like, it's not,
exactly.
and we always think that it's too much because, like, we're like, oh shit, when you live in capitalism, like, thinking, like, getting money is bad, even, like, just hoarding wealth is bad, whatever. Like, we're literally just asking for, like, a livable wage and to be able to live and make art, which, like, there are other societies throughout history where, like, being an artist was a job you could do. And it's not fair, especially how far like technology and humanity has progressed, that like that's not an option for us, you know, like but we're asking that it is, and that's not an unfair ask, you know.
Yeah.
Because we're also, like you're saying, I don't want to be a pop star or whatever. Like I literally just want like a livable wage off of making art, and like the art and ideas that I have are good enough and deserving of a living wage. Not that there are artists who like it's not deserving, whatever. Like I'm just saying in my case specifically, like I just want to be able to fucking eat, and I can make this good art too.
Yes. Yeah, and I was like, I've realized how weird it is to be an artist in America, because I used to just be like, well, we have the biggest pop stars, biggest like, because like all the biggest acts come out of America or England, and it's like, why is that? It's probably just because we know how to exploit people, you know. They just know how to exploit and squeeze every single last drop and get every last drop of revenue out of people, like until they become like superstars. Because it's like, and that's not really even healthy. It's like, just because we produce the most famous musicians doesn't mean like
they're good.
We have the best art or they're even good. Because like I'm really into this band called Destroyer, and like I've played them for you. I was playing them in the car yesterday, and it's basically one guy, and he's from Canada, but he's considered like this indie rock like legend. Like people that are into him, like his song structures and everything, like it's pretty innovative. It's pretty just unique to him. But like when you go on Spotify, like even though he's like considered this legend, like right now he has like 300,000 monthly listeners, and but he still like tours and has been doing it like his whole life. Like Destroyer has been like a lifelong thing. He put out an album this year. He puts out albums like all the time. He's constantly just writing and then touring and stuff. And it's like, how is he able to do that? And I read an article when he put out this like his latest album that he's able to fund it through like obviously he does have a revenue because he does have a fan base and stuff. But then like Canada gives him grants because they just support artists over there.
Yeah.
So like he'll I don't know if it'll be for a tour, but I think in the article is talking about how they had this vision for the music video, and they just applied for like a grant in like Canada or the city. I don't know if he lives in some big city in Canada, and yeah, they just like him there. They like what he's doing, and so they'll fund it because they think it's valuable art. And I was like, yeah, and there's no reason for him to be huge. Like he's just doing what he wants to do. You like it, you listen to it, you don't. It's just
and
like
there's money available.
Yeah, and
there's resources there,
and it's like,
let's use it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna talk a lot about Canada's government because I don't know like a ton about it. But like, and they probably
applies to us,
they
though.
probably have their flaws. But like, isn't that amazing that the government can notice that this like, because it's not even like it's just stupid like art that everyone's gonna like. It's pretty like interesting singer-songwriter stuff, but like they can notice that it's of like worth for society and like willing to fund it. Like, you can't even imagine this current administration doing it, and then like even any other fucking administration in America funding just a band.
But yeah, like how we've said too, of like all these abandoned buildings, we're willing to put up with like the waste that capitalism produces, but we can't fathom like, because there, like the reality is that there is money there. The government can afford to fund artists and stuff. Not that I'm saying I want like that government funded structure or whatever, but like I just want, like, there is money in the world, and the fact that I have to live through poverty is bullshit. Like, that shouldn't be the case when there is money sitting somewhere that no one is using. There are buildings sitting places that no one is using. And like, I am actively contributing to society even when I'm at the like butt end of society. Like, you know how much more I could contribute if you gave me the resources and like livability of living here. Like, it doesn't make sense that like that's not an option for us.
Yeah.
That can be
crazy.
it. it.
Fuck capitalism, bro.
Could happen. We could fuck capitalism.
We could fuck capitalism.
That pussy do be tight though. Okay, let's end it.
End it.
End it.